Hello, everybody, and welcome to Two Amputees, One Ginger. I'm One Ginger. Wow. I'm the other amputee. I'm amputee. Yeah. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the MedEvac Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Meyers, joined by our other host, David Reid.
Hello, everybody. You forgot my name over there?
Yeah, well, I thought you were going to announce yourself.
No, never.
Yeah, I'll announce. Welcome, David Reid, to the show.
Yes.
Before we hop into today's episode and make it really weird, there's a price for the show. You have to share it with a friend or family member, share it on social media, or interact with the content somehow. It's a must.
It is. Comment below. We love questions. We've been seeing some good ones lately, but not enough.
And make sure you tag the producers, Patrick and Trey. Ask them questions because they'll get back to you, I'm sure. Anyways, our guest today, Justin Day.
How's it going, guys?
Great. Thanks for being here
Happy to be here.
Fabulous hair.
Appreciate it.
It is beautiful hair.
Much as I interact with PJ's, got to bring it home somehow.
You know what? That's fair, actually.
What's a little bit of background about this guy?
Yeah, Justin was a Air Force Combat Controller, or CCT. Joined in 2014, was injured in 2018.
Correct.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Yeah.
You are, correct me if I'm wrong, you're a hip dysartic?
No, so above the knee.
So you're AK?
About 3 inches above the knee.
Okay.
Yep, so not a hip dysartic.
Thank God.
Yeah, no kidding.
Honestly.
Thank goodness for osseointegration, but
Yeah.
No such bad luck there.
Yeah. Well, thank God. Well,
seriously.
Welcome. We got, two amputees on the show again. So
Oh my goodness. It always comes back to it. But I'm actually really excited that we have a CCT on, especially like in light of the recent news with the recent graduate.
Yes.
For CCT.
Yep.
Justin's probably not going to talk about that today.
Completely away from that one. That is a suicide bomb right there.
We don't talk politics and religion on this show.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and skip on to the great stuff. And I always like to kick off the start of the conversation with why the military?
So originally, growing up, I did music. It's not the standard backstory for any operator. A common theme for operators kind of tends to be a little bit of a muddy childhood and background kind of growing up.
Team sport
I had none of that. Parents were phenomenal. Both my parents. Great. Awesome upbringing. I played music all through my early childhood into high school and fully intended on making that a career. Didn't like it. I did it because I was good at it. I could do it.
What instruments?
Violinist?
So started out with tuba was my main one.
Okay.
I was actually going to pursue a tuba performance degree at Southern Oregon University.
Wait, I'm sorry. What degree?
Tuba performance degree.
That's a thing.
That's a thing.
Oh,
That's
shit.
a thing.
Wow.
It will allot you a pretty successful music career if you
really.
It's a doctorate level degree, and a lot of people end up finding wild success when they actually end up at that level. But like I said, it was nothing that I wanted to actually do for the rest of my life. So I kind of flipped a 180 right at the end of high school and decided to pursue a career within special operations, mainly because I knew I wanted to kill people and I didn't want to go to prison.
Yeah,
were the two main motivators there.
Oh, so, that we'll unzip that here in a minute. But
gonna be honest,
We'll dive right in. Yeah.
we'll unzip that in a minute. But so, what was your parents' thoughts on this?
They're super supportive. My dad spent a while in the Army at a Patriot missile unit over in Saudi Arabia. So he had some experience on the Army side, and he said, if you want my blessing on this, you will at least hear the Air Force recruiter's pitch. Because I went soft shopping, I guess, recruiter office, branch to branch, figuring out which one would kind of allot me the best opportunity to be in the fight and have the most effect on the battlefield from my position. So that landed me on the Air Force side. So within the Air Force, there are three main special operations, career fields. You have combat control, pararescue, and now what they call special reconnaissance, or SR. Didn't want to go the PJ route because why I said before why I joined. So it kind of landed me on combat control. Had a controller come down from a 22nd Special Tactics Squadron, which is located up in Washington, and which is a short drive from Washington to Oregon. Show me some helmet cam footage of him getting in the gunfight. I'm like, that's what I want to do. So
sold.
Yep. Yeah. So this was, again, I was 18 when all this was going down. The contract opened up when I was 19, so I shipped off to basic training August of 2014. So I was 19 years old. Just
as an 18-year-old, what was your conception of what a CCT operator was?
Pretty accurate, actually. So the guy that actually gave me the initial rundown of what the career field was pretty thorough, and didn't give me any kind of false hopes or expectations. He was just a guy from the 2-2. So which was the best thing that recruiter could have ever done, because if the recruiter would have tried to give me this spiel, I probably would have just, brushed him off and went, no, I'm going to go Army or Navy. But he was, that was, like I said, the best thing that recruiter could have done.
And what did you think a CCT was?
I knew that they were under the branch of SOCOM, which is the big thing that I wanted. They got attached to other special operations teams, Army SF and NSW, and were respected among those communities. So those key things right there were huge. Yeah. So I knew that there was a lot of bomb dropping. I knew that it was a complicated task, and it was kind of right up my alley as far as the cognitive portion of wanting a career field that was challenging, both physically and cognitively. Yes. So that was the main draw towards this career field.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you enlisted in 2014 and then shipped off pretty quickly thereafter.
Correct.
How was your experience in training like?
So early on, like I said, I was 19. There were a ton of other 19-year-olds. And so let me back up a little bit. At the time, 2014, you could basically get any shady recruiter to pencil whip, the entry PT test for Air Force Special Operations, and off you went. Yeah. You didn't really have to have any other amplifying information or, mentoring or counseling prior to. So off you went, and you showed up. You may not even know what job you're going to. You may not know you have to get in the pool. I mean, so the huge volume of students that didn't even really know what they were there for was staggering. So on the first day of selection, the moment the students, a lot of the young guys smelled the chlorine in the air, they quit. Like they didn't even get in the pool, like a huge portion of them. And
you would think that.
Yeah, you would think
they'd do a little bit of research.
And they did, and they knew that it was a cool job, and it was respected, and it was a special operations job, but really getting in detail about the toll this would take on your psyche and just the psychological preparation you had to have going into it was vastly underestimated by them.
But look at that. You had a single conversation with a guy from the 2-2 who just laid out the career field like, this is what it's really like. Yep. And that puts you so far ahead of everyone else who had nothing.
Nope. Yeah, nothing. But at a recruiter.
That's almost nil information.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that puts you ahead already.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I would say, so up here, I've always been exactly the same. So physically, it took a long time for my body to catch up because within the first year of the pipeline, I was the youngest dude on my team by like 6 or 7 years. Oh, wow. All the other ones had either quit or they quit. Most of the other ones had quit. And it was, so the water was my biggest friend, which is not a tale that you hear a lot of people tell. Just because, again, up here, I was the same. I knew that I could stay calm, and that was my biggest attribute at the time. So the water was a break for me. So that's the biggest point of attrition throughout the entire.
Did you have swimming background or anything?
No, on the surface of the water, like freestyle swimming, I was crap. But all the water confidence,
breath hold stuff,
breath holds, the drum proofing, all that stuff, I was totally confident.
Pause you real quick about that. So you didn't grow up in a team sports environment or doing many physical activities. Where do you think that mental resiliency stemmed from?
I don't know. That initial, just I made a choice, I think, because I wanted that end result so badly that I stuck it out, and I convinced myself that I loved the water.
There was no option for quitting.
No, and never in my brain was there an option. Like never, I didn't even allow myself to say the words. Yeah, even like off time, I never joked about it.
It's easy at that point because you either make it or you die.
Yeah.
That's your choices.
Yeah. I'm not saying I didn't have any shallow water blackouts because I had a couple, but you get back up and you get back in the water. And once you and I tell students going into my current position, I tell students going into assessment selection, if you can get yourself to the point of passing out, that's death.
Yeah. That is death.
Barring another person pulling you out, you don't know anything else.
Yeah. You choose death.
And if that is the biggest thing that they have over your head the entire time, once you pass that threshold, there's nothing else that could possibly scare you.
What can they do worse?
Because I gather them all up and I go, what is the number one thing you're afraid of? And what it all boils down to is not the water, but blacking out in the water is the scariest thing.
Yeah.
And once you meet the wizard, once you meet the wizard, realize it's not that bad, and that's it.
Yeah, then they got nothing on you.
They got nothing on you. But like I said, physically, I was small. I was not. I could hang with the group, but barely. And I think the biggest difficulty in training was the social aspect of it. It took a long time for me to grow up and mature and be able to be cohesive on team with dudes that were, collegiate level athletes, had been drinking and partying for years and years. I had never been drunk ever at that point. And so it was really until my JTAC training that I wasn't awkward. I just didn't really have a spot I could fit. And I tried to make myself different things. And as dumb as it sounds, new guys going into this, when they ask hey, if I'm young, how do I jive with the rest of the group? And I said, be yourself. As dumb as that sounds. Don't try, because you can smell disingenuine people from a mile away, especially intelligent people, emotionally intelligent people, socially intelligent people. They're going to smell it from a mile away, and you're going to get shoved to the side. And you cannot thrive in the soft world if you are an outcast socially. You'll flounder, and you'll get stuck in crappy locations and positions and never really end up where you want to be. Yeah. So that was my biggest difficulty. But towards the end of training, I had kind of established myself. My body was growing up a little bit. I had established myself as a high-ish academic performer, and was. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead too much.
No. Do your thing.
So at the end of my time at the STTS, which is the final portion of it's your upgrade training after you get your beret. You go through all your combat dive school, free fall, all of your off-road vehicles, your shooting courses, all the soft core skills, essentially. At the end of that, about a month before, we got word that the 2-3 was looking for 3 slots to fill on a deployment. At the time, the 2-3 was kind of low on JTACs.
Okay.
So they were reaching out to the SCTS and said, we need your guys, what you guys would deem as the 3 most likely students to graduate JTAC, QC, or SOTAC, get their CMR stamp, combat mission ready, which is after your final eval, and then be able to, be able to jive on a team in a hot location in Afghanistan.
They were hurting for people that badly.
Yeah, they were. They were. So,
I mean, you never hear about them pulling people from training to deploy. That's so abnormal.
By the time we wouldn't have been in training technically by the time we graduated, but it's still.
But they wanted you guys stat.
Yes, they did. So I wasn't even fully in process to my unit before. So I got selected, and a couple other of my buddies, both awesome dudes, got pulled from the STTS and got sent out to JTAC QC. So I was not even fully in process to the 2-3 by the time I ripped out to QC. Got because there's a portion of academics you have to do before you go to SOTAC or JTAC QC. Knocked those out, super abbreviated, and went to the course, graduated fine, and it was when we got back to our unit, back to back cast trips. So it was Monday through Friday, cast trip, fly back Saturday, Sunday, refit, rekit, push back out on Monday.
Oh, damn.
And it was 2.5 months. So I had a really good run one of the days, and they're like, you're eval ready. Do you want an eval tomorrow? So I'm like, of course I said yes. Yeah. And I ended up doing fine on the eval and got my CMR stamp 2.5 months after graduating the STTS, which is, there's a lot of people that were not happy about that.
Yeah.
Because that's an exceptionally rare circumstance.
What's the normal timeline on this?
So usually you go to your unit, you spend some time on a global access team, which is your survey, airfield type stuff, the traditional combat controller mission. And you have to be, I wouldn't say a stellar performer, but a proficient dude, good guy on team, smart, physically, not a slob. Yeah. And you might get a chance to go to QC or SOTAC. So, I mean, and they like you to have a full deployment in. So before you end up. So like I said.
So 18 months to 24 months is the usual timeline, I'm assuming.
For like start to finish controller pipeline. So,
well, for that, the additional.
So CMR. I would say, I would say CMR. right around there. It's changed a little bit. A lot of guys will get put straight onto a strike troop, which means that you're going to QC or SOTAC eventually. Okay. But not before you're even in process to the unit.
Yeah, I could see the irritability of that from everybody else's perspective. It would be like the equivalent of, going through Ranger selection, getting to your unit, and then as a private, and then getting sent to Ranger school immediately.
Well, they're filling a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many of those guys were totally qualified, able to hack the MISH, but chose not to? That allowed this to happen.
Yeah.
I bet they bitched about it.
Yes, they did.
And they're the problem.
And
they're the
rightfully
problem.
so, because they didn't know.
I don't want to deploy. I got a wife at home. I can't fucking deploy right now. Like, well, then stop complaining.
I'm not super savvy on all the individual circumstances that people are, but I'm
just talking shit.
My experience, I was over the moon, obviously, to have this opportunity and to get put in the spot that I was going to be put in, because it was a hot location.
Okay.
Which, as a new JTAC, as a new operator in general, that was like the spot to go to. So it was. So I graduated, or I got my CMR and did a brief training with the team and pushed out to Eastern Afghanistan. So that's where I met my ODA.
So 2014.
Yep.
You enlisted.
Yep.
And you deployed when?
2018.
2018. Okay. So
that shows you the lengthy timeline from enlistment.
And that was
deployment.
A fast track.
Yep.
That was a fast track too.
Yeah. That's a significant amount of training.
Yeah, it is. You go there and you don't, I mean, you guys know your first deployment, you don't ever feel super, super ready, but you don't, I wasn't going in there like, I have no idea what I'm about to go do.
Yeah.
I had a pretty good grasp. I had a really good handover from the guy that replaced. Awesome dude. Controller from a Kentucky Guard unit. He had I want to say 5-6 month combat rotations by the time I replaced him. So it was good and bad because he gave me a great handover, but he also set a big precedence with that ODA. And they're going from this guy who's got a ton of real world experience to a brand new 22-year-old kid with no combat experience whatsoever.
Zero experience.
And how was that received?
You have to prove yourself.
Yeah.
I was called new, the guy's first name, for probably a solid month before I actually got called my first name.
They didn't give you a name.
You're like new Jack over here. Yeah.
That just, that really, I mean, sounds about right.
Yeah, that
pretty standard experience, I'd imagine, for a lot of people. But
sounds about right.
Where in Afghanistan were you?
Nangarhar.
Okay.
Yep. So right along the Pakistani border.
Yeah.
So we could see the Pakistani mountains from the entire time we were there, which, I mean, beautiful out there. If it wasn't for, that's one of the big takeaways I had. If it wasn't for the people out there, I mean, that's the only thing that made that such a.
It's not the same thing, sitting there on target, looking at the sunset across the mountains.
Yeah.
This is a ski resort. It's a high dollar ski resort.
If these shitheads, these few shitheads would just leave, this place would be phenomenal.
Yes, be beautiful.
Yeah, Helmand River Valley tours.
Yep.
I'll run those all day.
Yeah. But so got on the ground with my ODA and was dropping within 6 hours of me being there. So it was immediately. So the scenario we had a whole bunch estimated anywhere between 700 and 1,000 ISIS-K fighters. And if you don't know the difference between ISIS and ISIS-K is like the greater value ISIS, essentially, is how main body ISIS views it. So they occupied a lot more of the Afghani, I guess their AO rather than the Iraq, Syria area. Anywhere between 700 and 1,000 fighters pushed into this valley that was, I think it was 8 miles long out there. They pushed in and pushed every single civilian out because they're going to declare this as their caliphate. They got this big old nasty foothold in the area, repurposed all the irrigation canals, made them into trenches, covered them with plywood so they could just, pop up over here and launch mortars and then pop up over here on the other side of the valley with no idea where they were going or how they were getting there. So it was kind of
crafty little fuckers.
Yeah, they were absolutely. It was, like I said, a dream deployment. I was dropping all the time. It was everything I could have ever wanted out of enlisting in that short span of time before I got hurt.
And you said you got your first mission within 6 hours of arriving?
We were our plan of action was to basically, we had Afghan local police, ALP there, and we established an OP right at the edge of Indian country. Like at the time, I want to say like 300 meters from the closest occupied building. Oh, yeah. So it was right there. Yeah. And the rest of that entire valley was just infested with them. So what we planned on doing was basically, I would be up on the OP dropping, and I was talking to 4-hour vols of F-16s a day, so 16 hours of F-16s a day, and then other aircraft in the stack along with it. We were pushed every asset in the entire country all the time. We were hogs in that regard. I mean, air assets, like crazy.
So you're on the radio all day long, dropping ordnance.
Yep. Damn. So basically, I'd be up on the OP dropping one day, and then either the next day or a couple days later, we'd go down into the valley, clear through a series of buildings, and implant a ALP checkpoint there to hold our flot. So that would be our new flot. And then each time we'd go back up to that and then push farther in and hold that ground and then push back. I'd drop, and it was kind of that rhythm. Yeah. So it was
clear with ordnance. Oh yeah. Push with ALP.
Yep. Clear with ordnance. Push with our guys, and so I would go down.
Our guys would,
So we'd be down in the valley with them, pushing through the buildings, the compounds, taking them around, and then pull them back and refit, rekit while I was dropping up on the OP. My ODA was phenomenal. Huge props to them. They were really phenomenal dudes, and for them, like this was that's the SF mission right there, because they were making sure all the ALP were trained up to their SOPs and pushing them out to retake their valley, because it wasn't like they were local police. Yeah, like, that was their valley. So I mean, they had raging war hard-ons the entire time.
Yeah, it was. You just took over my home. Like I'm coming in to push you out now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. So you had to kind of tailor make sure those guys weren't getting too crazy out of line with some of the stuff they were doing out there. But it was a Wild West. It was incredible. But the anti-personnel IED threat out there was vast. So they'd mass produce these really difficult to detect IEDs. So they weren't using ordnance or anything like that. They would urinate into these jugs, let the water evaporate out, scrape the nitrogen crystals out, accumulate on the sides of the containers, wrap that in duct tape, speaker wire to that, and then 2 wooden dowels with springs on either end and a 9-volt battery in the middle. So that was it. And a blasting cap in the charge.
That's it.
So that's it. So I'm not an EOD guy, so I'm sure there's tons of nerds out there like, that's not how it works. But
anyone who has a pen and paper right now, put it down. Yeah. You're going to get yourself hurt.
But that's my understanding of it. So calm down.
Can of white out.
Yeah. Yeah. But so and with as much ordnance as I had dropped in the area, it was almost impossible to stop and interrogate every little hit you got, because you're looking for a 9-volt. Yeah. That's really about the only thing you're going to pick up. And there's, massive, metal frag from huge bombs that have been dropping out there. So it's basically you're rolling the dice.
Yeah.
Every single time you walk down, they'd hang them in trees. They're everywhere. So it was on one of those, I was down in the valley, I was on one of those compound clearances where we had just cleared a multi-story compound, and we were walking out to our MATVs, which were staged on the road. And I want to say 3 or 4 man out the door of the compound, walking back up to the MATV. And there was a dirt path and the asphalt road. And, a lot of time when you get rain, it'll have like a washout underneath the asphalt where dirt meets, and there's like an asphalt overhang. That's they had tucked the charge. So
is this day or night?
It was daytime. Okay. Yeah, they would not fight at night. They would hide, and you would get nothing done except step on IEDs at night. So daytime was real about the only time that they would show themselves, because they knew that they would get annihilated at night.
Everyone's got night vision and IR.
ISR.
ISR. RPAs overhead.
Yep. So I was walking up the road and had my left foot up on the asphalt, right foot still down on the dirt, and saw a bright white flash, felt a bunch of heat on my face, and was kind of launched up and onto the road. So another little thing about explosives, there's a little bit of a safe bubble directly below the charge and it goes off and directly above it. So if you are directly on top of that cone, you're probably going to be spared from a lot of concussive force of that blast.
That was definitely me.
Yep, me too. So I remained conscious throughout the entire event until I blacked out from blood loss. So I knew immediately what had happened when it went off, and landed on my butt. When the dust cleared and all the dirt settled, I leaned over and looked at my right leg, which is stripped of all of its soft tissue, just exposed tib, fib, no foot. Had a pretty significant opening on my left leg, and initially, what it felt like, as you're like a little kid and you're screaming down a hill on a bike and you dump the bike.
Oh yeah,
it's not pain in it, like in that initial instance, like a burn.
Yeah,
it's like that huge adrenaline dump. That's what it felt like, and had my Charlie come over and start treating me first, because the secondary medic who was actually dismounted on the patrol was, I want to say, incapacitated by the blast because he was behind me when it went off.
That overpressure's a bitch.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Now, before you go into detail on when they started working on you, is like, what's going on in your brain? What's going on?
Exactly what happened, and it was kind of like a surreal, because I had seen what those specific charges did to people, and they were, from what I saw, 100% kill rate up until me.
Wow.
So it was like, initially I was like, is this what dying feels like? Because I don't know if my entire lower half is gone.
Yeah.
I don't know what anything looks like. So I'm like, am I just looking at the final glimpses before, I'm dumping 3 gallons of blood out of my body in about 2 seconds before I'd pass out? But as I kind of looked at more the extent of the injuries, I realized that I'm probably going to live, barring any kind of crazy, weird, arterial complications or anything like that. And I was determined that I was not going to cry out. That was one thing that this was such a huge deal over there that I knew that one of us is going to end up drawing that straw eventually. And if it's me, I'm not going to die a bitch, basically what my thing was. But I was kind of talking through it a little bit and trying to pull tourniquets off my kit to help the guys out. And the first words out of my mouth though were, "Are my nuts still there?" First word.
That's everybody's question.
Yeah. Start ready to pop tourniquets if those things are gone. But
can you, if you don't mind, can you build the scene a little bit? So you said you looked down and your right foot is gone at this point.
Yep. Yeah. And all my soft tissue off my tib fib.
So are your pant legs, are your pants completely off?
So they were
pretty destroyed.
They're pretty destroyed. I don't remember too much the clothing details.
Okay.
But the big sweeping items.
And then most of your skin and soft tissue had been removed.
Yeah, you had stripped off the tib fib.
Okay. And then your left leg, you said you had an injury on the left leg as well?
Yeah, so basically from my knee all the way up into my groin was wide open.
Flayed open.
Yeah, flayed open.
Okay.
So it stopped short.
Almost. Almost. I'm still able to make a kid after this. So I'll put it that way. Everything's still there. Everything works. But not untouched.
But, dang.
But it didn't wipe everything out. So
good.
Very, very blessed for that. So asked the guy, everything's still there. He's like, yep, good to go. Later, he said it looked like the Predator face. As what he described it as,
but
not
then and there. Thank God for him.
Yes, no kidding.
I don't know. Man, it looks like the Predator face.
He's looking underneath. Yep.
Yep. But so at that point, big old burly, massive R18 Delta or primary 18 Delta. Big old red beard. He had ran up to me and dropped a knee into my left hip and started to try and recover what he suspected to be a retracted femoral bleed up in my pelvis. So at that point, I was like, my chances of living through this have just significantly started to dwindle.
Yeah.
And he worked his hand into that hole and ended up making sure that was all okay, which it was. And at this point, I was starting to like actually feel all the pain. I laid on my back, held my hands up to my face, and they're like black hamburger meat. Had this part of my hand hanging over the side, my fingers were dangling off, and just couldn't recognize them.
Just a mess.
Yeah, it's a mess. So I'm like, I definitely lost my leg. Probably gonna lose both my hands. But I started to kind of groan and grumble, like, give me something, like push something in me. Ended up going out, and I ended up receiving, I want to say it was something like 20 units of blood back at Jalabad Airfield, Jeff.
Wow.
So I had apparently shown little to no vital signs for a long portion of the ride back to our MSS, and which comprised most of my brain injury. Technically, it's an anoxic brain injury rather than a traumatic brain injury. I still had some frontal lobe damage from the because it wasn't no concussive force; it was less. So the major insult was to my basal ganglia, which, if you guys don't know, is the portion of your body that is, or portion of your brain that is a big hitter in Parkinson's disease. So when that is affected, you start to get lots of tremors and involuntary, neck and head jerks and stuff, which I'll get into that later. It was super frustrating when I was recovering. But ended up getting pushed over to JAF, or actually our MSS first, where they started the blood products and completed the amputation.
Did they drive you, or did you go via helicopter?
So I drove from the valley to our MSS, and then was medevaced from our MSS to Bagram.
Okay.
I want to say I went straight to Bagram.
Okay.
After that.
That would make sense.
Flew me via helicopter, Bagram, and then to Landstuhl, Germany, where they pulled me out of my sedation and basically to excavate me, like to pull the intubation tube out of my lungs, because I had so much infection build up there because it was field intubation. So it needed me to cough up all that nastiness and phlegm and stuff out of my lungs. And there I was met actually by one of he was the acting chief of the 2-3 at the time, a scary dude, super, super scary dude. Even still to this day, after all the history we've had together, he still makes me really uncomfortable when he's in the room with me. But he showed such a massive degree of compassion and kindness that I could tell, even in my dazed, sedated state, could tell that he was heartbroken by seeing me the way that I was. So I was put back under and then flown from Landstuhl to Walter Reid, where I was met by my, at the time, pregnant wife.
Okay.
Who was...
Oh man, that had to be hard.
It was not easy. Not easy. For either of us, So my parents were there. Basically, my entire immediate family was there. And the initial portion of the recovery was decent because I was so high. So high all the time. Ketamine, go on a little tangent here. So I have something on my med records that says, do not give me ketamine, because my hallucinations were, the most florid, vibrant, like, this is real, but it was like I was in hell. Horrible.
Oh, wow. Oh, they were terrible.
Terrible.
Really?
Terrible. And ketamine's a very rare one where it doesn't, at no point do you realize that you're on ketamine.
Yes.
Like it takes a wheel and you're in the trunk.
Yeah, you slowly dissociate and you're gone.
Basically, when I get pushed ketamine, the room turns red, like a haze of red in the room. The walls catch on fire. There are snakes crawling across. And this is every time.
Oh my God.
Same thing. Same hallucination every time. There's snakes crawling across the ceiling, and there's women in every corner of the room, hunched over, peeling the skin off their back and over their heads.
You have this every time?
Every time.
Every time. Like clockwork.
Shit. I've never heard of anything like that.
I was like, now, can't do it.
When you spoke with your doctors, did you ask them the question, hey, did this TBI quite possibly could this be affecting?
I'm sure there were discussions like that, but honestly, I don't remember them.
You were high, high in hell, brother. That was too high in hell.
The conversation we had, and probably not with me.
So I imagine, like in real life, you're sitting there screaming, or like probably
pretty much paralyzed.
You're probably just like sitting there, like this is not real, but
it felt real.
But it's real.
It was real to me. It was as real as real gets.
Wow.
Fuck, dude.
So ketamine at that point was off the table, and it was replaced with IV Dilaudid.
Dilaudid.
And
I set a timer, 10-minute timer for Dilaudid.
Yep.
Just be like, dink.
Yep. My brother was actually there at the bed. Every single time he could push it, he did.
Yeah. Here you go.
Doped out of my mind all night long.
Perfect.
That shit's heavy too.
Yeah, it is. It is. So that puts me at Walter Reid.
So, man, yeah. So tell me about like your wife's reaction.
So she knew that I was in a location where that was a possibility. I told her it was a probability that something was going to happen because I knew the very dynamic nature of the place and how especially hot it was.
That had to make her panic.
She grew up in a military family.
Okay.
She
able to manage expectations.
She was not completely, annihilated by it. So she picked up and moved up to Walter Reid and kind of went on. We're not together anymore. So it was not awesome, unfortunately. Long term for the relationship. I think it just put some really big strains and stuff on.
Common. That's very common.
Yep. But so my big thing was not wanting to be another thing she had to take care of when the baby came.
Mm-hmm.
That was my big thing.
You want to be able to provide.
Yeah. Well, not just because I was providing just by being in the military. Just the fact of me being in the military, but I wanted to help her and
not be a burden.
Not be a burden.
Yeah.
Not be a burden. So that drove really the rapid pace of my desire for a rapid recovery. So there are certain hard and fast, the amputee world, there's certain hard and fast timelines for things like the washouts and reopening and stuff and taking more length off that, immediately puts at least 6 weeks before you can get back in a socket. Mm-hmm. And then if you already have a socket, if you get length taken off, you have to get an entire new one made to accommodate the new, new length and new shape. So she was really supportive and had a pretty good head on her shoulders throughout the entire thing to me. And my dad was huge, instrumental in making sure that the big picture stuff, like the big moving pieces, were going in my favor.
Okay.
He stayed with me in the hospital, or at least in the area, for a long time before he actually felt comfortable enough to leave. And he was instrumental in me feeling like I was, like there was something. The way he's able to work people and organizations, like he's a police officer in Southern Oregon now.
Okay.
And, but the way he's able to, work his way around people and organizational, like kind of bureaucracy stuff is pretty astonishing. So he was big in making sure I was getting taken care of in the best way that I legally could. So that and old Chuck Edwards, you guys have had on here before.
Yes, love Chuck.
So he was shot a couple months before I was blown up. So when he heard about that, he'd already made a big foothold to Walter Reid and had already established where are the good nurses, who are the good orthopedic surgeons, how quickly can we get him down to the MATC, which is the the more advanced physical therapy area. That's not the inpatient physical therapy, because that's depressing as you possibly can imagine. The inpatient physical therapy room is like, oh my gosh,
it's pretty terrible. Guys who can't move at all.
So
it's pretty terrible.
Some like a kind of a trifecta there of people kind of working to make sure I was getting taken care of. So that was big. At no point did I ever not have a teammate with me.
Mm-hmm.
Someone from, not just from the 2-3, but from my troop was with me.
That's huge.
So, and sometimes I had multiple.
Isn't it, the SOCOM community is so great.
Yeah. It's wild.
Especially when you get hurt, you get a liaison assigned to you. Like, they fly everybody down from, I mean, my PL flew and hung out with me for a while. You know what I mean?
That's, it's huge.
Yeah, it's
huge.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And then I had, my flight docs with me prior to going into surgeries. I had my people from the medical staff at my unit, making sure that they were tracking everything going on. That way, when I got back to the unit, they could kind of pick up where all the doctors left off, and I wouldn't be sacrificing any care or anything like that. So surgery after surgery after surgery, my hands were wrapped up in these big old yellow spongy mittens for probably close to a month. And the amount of weight loss I experienced I'm still...
Because you had someone that had to feed you?
Yes.
Yeah.
You had someone to wipe your ass?
Yep. Yeah. When I could poop.
When you could poop. Yeah. That's
all those opiates.
All the Dilaudid.
That shit locks up.
It does. It locks you up.
Going anywhere. So I think the biggest psychological toll of all of this happened when I lost that much weight. It really, and it sounds like a small piece of the puzzle, but when you go from being almost like a God complex.
That's what I say all the time.
Yeah, a God complex.
Special operations warfighter.
Especially as a JTAC.
Yeah.
That much power for that long.
Yeah.
Dealing that much, destruction and death. And when you're good at it, give me chills right now. When you're good at it, it's an orchestra. It is, because you have surface fires going, you have organic mortars, you have Apaches doing runs, F-16s following them up, your all of your ISR doing strikes. And it's amazing.
And you're the maestro.
Yes, absolutely. and you get into almost like a flow state.
Yeah.
Like a true flow state. So you go from that to being tiny and completely helpless.
Yeah, immobile.
And an Air Force guy. That's the big thing, because nobody there knows what a controller is.
Interesting.
And you're almost like a why are you here kind of feeling. And that's all I'm sure up here in my own brain. But that was my perception. So that was my reality at the time, is I am this tiny little stick and I'm an Air Force guy and nobody knows what I was or what I did just a month ago. So
that fall is hard to recover from.
It's really tough. Really, really tough.
I think that's what can end up ending a lot of people who get stuck in that, right? They get stuck in that, I've fallen and I can never recover.
Yeah. Yeah. So the big thing in that was, and this is not advice I'd give to hardly anybody, but hating myself enough to never want to go back to it. There was when I went out of inpatient care at Walter Reid, you go to it's called Building 62, which is basically revamped dorms. It's actually a nice living arrangement, 2 bedrooms, washer dryer, full kitchen, refrigerator. But there was a mirror directly to my left of the toilet when I was sitting down, and I despised the way I looked when I was sitting on that toilet, as small as I was. Each time I looked in that mirror, I felt like I was humiliating myself just by looking at me.
Kind of a reminder every time.
Yeah, I think that's a really common.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Common. I mean, it's same thing for me. I think that's why I lifted weights and became 210 pounds after I was able to do it, because
you were massive.
I used to be a big boy, but
it's.
I kind of want to roll back. You said something. You said I hated myself. And I used that.
Yeah.
I used it as motivation, but did you hate yourself or did you hate what you were seeing?
I hated what I was seeing.
Okay. I wanted to...
Yeah, but at the time, those things blended together.
Yeah, and I
was
close. Curious if you were able to dissociate those two things.
Eventually I was.
If you're blaming yourself for it, then you could hate yourself for it, right?
Yeah. And I never blamed myself for it, because I knew that it was obviously not something that I did.
Yeah,
it was not.
Of course.
It was not a tactical error. It was not a judgment error. It was
shit luck.
Really just
shit luck
of the draw.
Yeah.
And not even shit luck. It's just there's a high probability.
Yeah, there is.
Like it was going to happen to one of us eventually. And of the people that were out there, I'm glad it was me because I had, and I'm sure every other dude on the ODA would have responded in a similar manner than I did. But I'm glad that it was me because I handled it well. The support I had from my unit was phenomenal. And I'm on the other side of it. But I think
that's the biggest thing, man, is the support system you have around really breeds how well you are.
And the big thing with that, and I tell this to so many people, true life-changing, destructive, life-altering events do not build resiliency, they test it. You need to cultivate that prior to all of this stuff happening. You need to cultivate your network. You need to find opportunities to make yourself stronger psychologically. Read, get into other people's lives, not in a way that feels like you're asking for stuff.
And that's the opposite of what a lot of people do that have these kind of situations break them. I always say, so you got to expose yourself, right? And what worse of a thing is there out there for someone who's suffering than to expose themselves? They just lock themselves in. No one understands me. I'm alone in this. And then all of a sudden it just breeds this environment of just loathing, And kind of back to what you were saying, was able to separate do I hate myself or do I hate what I look like? Those were blended because of the amount of opiates I was on.
Sure.
It was huge.
Yeah,
absolutely. This lie in my
also,
brain.
It is a life-changing event that happens. You go from, like we said, a special operations warfighter to someone who can't even move. That can't even take a shit now, can't even eat. So like that will break your character, and there's no personal growth that's going to happen when you're that diluted from all the drugs that you're on.
Absolutely not. Yeah, that's the time that it tests it. Test your resiliency and how much
it's getting through it. I mean, I'm sure I could ask you the same. You'd have the same responses that when someone comes up to you and says, "How did you make it through that?" You're like, "Fuck, I did it day by day." It's not like you can't look at the whole resume and say, well, I knew where I was going to be today.
That's absolutely true. One thing I will say that I am like, if I have a unique skill set or something that's more pronounced characteristic wise than other people, would be the ability to have perspective. Be able to step back from a situation, see the bigger picture, realize that
this guy might be me.
This guy might be me. Now is not forever. This too shall pass. I can't tell you how many times I've said that in my brain. This too shall pass. This is not forever. I can see the bigger picture. And that has been helpful, especially in like the selection portion of like the first year and a half of the pipeline. Was my world is not the world, and everything ends eventually. They can't kill me, and if they do kill me, I'm dead anyways. I'm not going to care. So, so the like I was saying, and kind of back to what you were saying too. The psychological impact from being small. So take a wheelchair, wheelchairs, just the physical angle being below everybody. That's huge.
Yes, it is.
Huge.
Where everyone has to look down.
And it immediately puts you in a submissive posture and pulls you from being a potential threat to someone that needs help.
And that was the biggest thing for me was, and that's why I went through my journey too, just hating myself, just like you said, was I felt like, when you're on crutches and you don't have a leg anymore and, people are looking at you, the children are pointing and laughing, it's like, I just felt weaker and it felt like everyone felt sorry for me. And I hated that because I was like, do you know what I used to do? I used to kick people in the teeth, and then I can't even fucking walk. And how frustrating is that?
And when you try to explain that to people, it's almost feel like they go like, oh, sure you did.
Yeah.
Down the head. Like
you were just Air Force.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, so that took a lot of time to recover from. That was a huge motivator for getting up on a prosthetic. That was big. Basically, I ended up so wound down into a dark hole and I could only attribute it to opiates because the only time I didn't feel like that was when I would take that first dose in the morning. And it would be that initial Like what would go through my head is everything's going to be okay. And for the rest of that day, you're chasing that dragon.
Yeah.
You're taking more and more and more, trying to replicate that feeling that's just never quite there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when that becomes a losing strategy, dark thoughts start to enter your brain. So I remember the point where I decided to come off of a lot of my medication, including the opiates, primarily the opiates, was when I realized that I had never touched the shower curtain inside that building 62, for fear that it would hold my weight. And if you kind of get what I'm saying there, I was afraid that that would be a potential out. That was terrifying to me.
Yeah.
So at that point, I'm like, I can't do this because I have a son now.
Yeah.
That's not going to be my story.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing I'm doing right now is working, and the only thing I can think of that could possibly start to make this better and be potentially a cause for all this are the opiates. So I laid out on my bed. I remember the night clearly. On my bed, the exact amount of medication that I'd need to not go into severe withdrawal, because at this point I had been on 15 milligrams of oxycodone every 4 hours for months.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that I didn't want to be completely and utterly, useless and in pain and
full withdrawals.
So I laid out a titration schedule, and I put them in a plastic bag, flushed I put them back in the prescription container, flushed all the other ones down the toilet, which I know is not recommended, not the right way to do it, but it was a symbolic thing for me at the time. Like, these are gone. He's gone. Put that medication bottle back in the cabinet with only that amount in it. And I went the next day to my primary care doc and told him that I want him to stop prescribing me this medication.
Yeah.
If I come and ask for it, don't let me
say
do
no.
it. Yeah, say no. So I eventually started to come off of it, and I still went into, it wasn't severe withdrawal, but I was feeling really, really awful for probably a solid week.
Yeah, sure.
And ended up coming off of it, and the profound and dramatic turnaround psychologically just cleared up my brain was...
you lifted that fog up,
lifted a fog, because like I said, it creates a lie in your brain that says, this is the only way you're happy.
Yeah.
This is the only way you can be happy. Which, looking back on it, doesn't make sense. But again, it's a huge, huge player in a negative psychological state.
And it's about taking action, realizing that you need to take a change and making that symbolic gesture to do such,
Absolutely.
I think that's an incredible, incredible aspect of your story. And
it is.
It's also not told, but it's so suffered from.
Absolutely.
I think everybody who has gone through a severe injury like that has a battle they faced with narcotics.
Absolutely.
And people just want to, kind of stuff that down, shake it off, and say that, that's just how it is, and that's not true. I think we're a lot better nowadays at mitigating the risks. Not giving the access that we used to 10 years ago or anything like that. So it's true testimonial to your character, man, is being able to make that choice. And
I appreciate that. I mean, it was for the betterment of my family. It was the bigger thing that was driving me towards there. Because if it was just me out there,
but that's that perspective thing, brother. Yeah, is that you're able to sit back and realize there's other people in your lives that need you.
Yep. So yeah, looking back on the entire thing, the big takeaways that I had from it, to not wrap the entirety of your identity into a career, as tough as that is in this world.
Yeah.
And you have to in training. You have to. That has to be everything.
You live and breathe it.
Yes.
Yep.
But while you're doing it,
it's a lifestyle.
Yep. But in I mean that in the selection phase, there has to be no other thing in your mind that makes you except that.
Yep.
Because when you introduce another option, another variable in there, that you can tie yourself to that's not making it through.
Like quitting.
Yes.
And moving on to go get your Burger King.
Yeah, another thing. Anything.
Yeah, go to the Friday night movie. Yeah.
So
that is true.
I tell dudes when they arrive at the 2-3s, new guys, find something else that makes you, because this can be snatched from you so quickly. Mm. You can roll your ankle today on a run and it never quite heals right. And you're always seeing the PT, and eventually you have to get surgery, and the surgery never quite recovers the way it used to be. And then all of a sudden you look back and you lost your free fall qual. You haven't died. You haven't done any of your anything for a year, and then you miss a deployment, and then all of a sudden you're sitting, and then your career's gone.
Yeah. And
then what are you left with? You get a car wreck on the way to work and lose.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing is that you see a lot of these guys get so stuck on what they've done in the past. It's really hard to separate that and tell someone, hey, wake up. It's time to move on.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of people out there that could do that.
Yeah.
But there is people like you who can do that and provide that outlet for people.
Well, I mean,
it's hard to close a book or hard to close a chapter in the book when it's your entire identity.
Yeah.
When it's all your friends, it's all your family, it's all you know. Yeah. It's really hard to move on from that chapter because it's such a big part of yourself.
And all I'm asking people to do is not to close the entire book.
Just part of it.
When they're in it. When they're in it. Don't close the whole thing, because that's obviously not a good idea.
Yeah.
But close part of it.
Yeah.
And leave, find something, whatever that is, whether it's your family, an awesome hobby, like something that you tie personal value to that can't be so easily snatched.
Or just stop looking back so much.
Yeah,
that too.
I think that's a great message.
Look forward, right?
I think that's a fantastic message. Is don't let your past experiences define who you are.
Yep. Well, it's a dangerous thing.
It is.
And get wrapped up in, because life is completely and entirely unpredictable. And
absolutely,
putting too many of your eggs in one basket is a really dangerous thing to do, because then you're left with nothing, no identity whatsoever. And that's a really dark place to be. And the time to find an identity is not in that dark moment. Overall, I'm such a vastly better person than I was. The colorful experience that I've had since all of this went down. I mean, take where I am right now. Like, I would not have been allotted this opportunity to do anything that I've done in the past, however long it's been, 4 years, that I would have if this hadn't happened. I'm a more well-rounded person. I've got a better understanding of my own character. My relationship with my family, like my immediate family, is so much stronger than it was before. So much amazing stuff has come from this. And that's because I
have an elevated perspective.
Well, I didn't let myself stay down in that hole.
Yeah.
Which I think is a pretty common message for a lot of people, but it's one thing to say it and another thing to do it. Like I said, a lot of amazing things can come from turmoil and heartache, and turmoil and heartache is temporary.
Yeah.
It does not last in a person's entire life. It will pass. It passes eventually. It does. So, it'll pass. And what's on the other side of it, if you come out and learn from everything that you went through, even if it wasn't your own fault initially, you learn other people, you learn whatever environment that you're in during that time, you end up with just so much more perspective after all of it's over. So there's a lot of good that can come from suffering.
Incredible, man. Incredible.
Yeah, could not agree more.
So where can we find you?
Right now I'm over at Lackland Air Force Base, training PJs and controllers, how to be PJs and controllers.
Still getting it done, brother.
Yep, something like that.
That's amazing. No, that's amazing. So, funny enough, and my final question to you is when you were in that hospital bed, did you ever think that you were going to be back on your own 2 feet and training troops to get back out there?
I had no idea. No idea. But I kind of imagined it would be something.
I messed up that whole pitch, by the way. Your own 2 feet. Maybe not your own 2 feet.
Yeah.
And they're not troops. They're airmen.
One of my own, and then another really expensive foot. So, yeah. By the way, like, if there was a spot in time and history to have this happen, it's the United States and now.
Oh, yeah.
The technology that's out there now is...
Yeah, I can't wait.
Like, oh my gosh.
What happens in 10 years from now.
Seriously.
Oh Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to be able to jump 15 feet.
Yep. Yep.
You know,
you're going to have to
cut my other leg off.
Yeah. That's what I mean. I was just going to ask, would you regrow it or would you have 2 robot legs?
I would have it. Well, if I could perform like that, 2 robot legs.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hands down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fuck, I have both my normal legs. Now I'm out. It's bullshit. No robot legs for me.
Oh, man. It has been awesome having you on the show today.
Appreciate the opportunity, guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're inspirational, man.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for being here, Justin.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the MedEvac Podcast. If you got something out of today's episode, please share it with a friend or family member, blast it out on social, and interact with it somehow. We would do the same for you. All right.
All right, everybody.
Bye.